.ca or Canada. And what this group is doing, mostly made out of Indigenous tribe governance, they've been privately monitoring water and water quality throughout the entire nation of Canada. And so we've been working with them for a few years just on common principle. So we, there's just a lot of talk and a lot of bickering and a lot of complaining about what's going on in the world. And we wanted to kind of put that aside and common bond over the obvious common goal. And without monitoring of water honestly, and honestly, that's the difference. They have a reputation for the last 30 years of being honest about what's going on within the water and being honest about these evolutions that go on both conventionally and in nature. So we're talking about conventional water plants and dams and riverways and just the way we're doing things. And there's people in the world that lead with this, and we're not reinventing the wheel here, but we notice there's really no implement. No, there's a lot of monitoring. It's all bungled up in the politics. And that doesn't mean that doesn't have value or you can't work with that. All sides are going to have to work together here. But we figured solution orientation with conventional engineering and getting together with everybody on that common bond, which kind of brings us to how Izzi and I started talking and trying to interweave all these common visions together without any boundaries of nations and governments. And, we can work from what they regulate on upward and bring in new aspects. And some of the new aspects are in the science and spirituality and quantum physics, where things blend together, where water is really stepping out. And it turns out that the water itself is the solution, not the toxins that are in it or not the filters that take the toxins out. And so we got all on this same page. It took about a year to break the language barriers and do this. But I'm happy to announce that it was proposed that we expand the Canadian model of honest water monitoring. We bring in applications and more advanced science and privately organize this so we can remain responsible and there's not influence and binding contracts that lock everyone down into, just a entangled mess. And so one step at a time, we're beginning with the state of New York. So sometime in May, there'll be a watertoday.ny, and that will be the model to expand with scale into the rest of the United States of live and historical monitoring. So you can, anybody in any region can watch the cycles of what happens to the water and the waterways years after you take dams down. And that's starting to happen now. The dams are coming down. Biomimicry isn't a theory. It's actually how well we can observe keenly and copy nature. And so that's what it's all about, not just monitoring water quality for what's wrong in it and boiling alerts and flooding and all the events that happen with water, but to really study water in the long-term cycle and and bring in the living qualities to it. And that's what Natural Action wants to do is kind of help with, okay, we monitor what's in the water, but what is the living quality of the water itself? And that was actually, I think, the language barrier break between working with Water Today Canada and actually forming a partnership that was to go to action. And Izzi represents a lot of what that is out in the layers of the fingers, if you will, on where this all reaches, and a new generation getting involved with good stuff, which, I commend you for that, because a lot of the youth is more or less just kind of on the digital front and doesn't get out in the world. That might be a good takeoff point. Anyways, I don't want to it's a soft launch right now. And I think this year we'll develop in New York what the plan is and get sponsors and then scale to every state. And that's something that can be done throughout the world in a simple way and with solution. So I don't think people need to be concerned about what's wrong with their water. They should be concerned with what's right with their water going forward, and everybody start to think that way. And I think we'll see big changes I think everyone's going to be surprised when you do simple things in a widespread way under a common vision how successful it can be. So, Izzi, why don't you? I'm going to switch to the screen view here, so
Okay.
your beautiful face is more visible.
I
And you
appreciate you.
tell us how you got started with this vision and how long you've been doing it, and why you're doing it, and just give us a little background.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just deep gratitude for having me on your platform and being here to share some words with you. And again, this, like you mentioned, the relationship that we've been able to form, it feels really good. And it's the synchronicity and the timing is impeccable, especially, the work you're doing in New York. And yeah, just getting to myself and my brother. Originally, we grew up in Idaho on the Shoshone-Bannock Reservation. Actually, right as I was born, we moved off the reservation. My grandmother still lives out there, and it just interesting dynamics. Being shielded from our ancestral wisdom and knowledges as a young kid allowed my brother and I to just to speak the modern day language of the Western world, whether it's science or religion. So we were pressured through religion, through different angles, and that especially being shielded from our indigenous roots as a child, it allowed a lot of confusion, but it now has really aligned to the work what we're doing and being able to bridge different worlds, and whether it's science and religion or just the indigenous practices of our ancestors. Um, so yeah, we're Haudenosaunee, which is the Iroquois nation, or the Six Nations, which they refer to. And like I said, we grew up in Idaho. Um, did did the whole American walkabout and the dream of college and just the regular life until we had taken off, graduated college, and started working for health fitness clubs through marketing. And that was actually our preparation and initiation point of how to speak and market for right now is the elements, or our ancestors, or the indigenous ways. So yeah, it seems like we were like all of us prepared at a young age to be doing the work we're doing now. And right now, my brother and I have been traveling the last 9 years, spreading and teaching and absorbing indigenous practices, including that of our own indigenous practices, since being removed from New York, which is where the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquois reside in, and finding ourselves in Idaho, we've had to um, find our original ways. And yeah, we've formed a group called the Tree of Light. Church and Wellness is our attempt to bridge this modern way of living and proper or professional organization into what we're doing now is bridging um, indigenous way or ancestral ways. And just to kind of clear up this word indigenous, it's very clear to us that somebody who is working for the earth and being of service for the earth is indigenous. So all of us are indigenous to this earth and to this work, as long as that we're in service to the elements, and in particular our situation, the waters. First, if as long as we're in service to the earth and her resources, everybody's indigenous to this earth. So yeah, last several years we have been implementing, whether it's prayer, whether it's ceremony, it's nature, it's songs, or is it dance. Another way we've been merging our ancestral knowledge is through sound therapy, or what we call sound ceremonies. And we have been traveling the country doing small intentional events around basically meditation. And what we've Im- implemented, one of our ancestral ways, is just story time, because that's we believe that was the original schoolings, the original passing of knowledge was around the campfire, was around food, was around community. And so we have been providing spaces, intentional gatherings around meditation and sound therapy. So we have been using several different instruments that we value as equal as us, and even elders in that way, and showing and allowing people to journey within their heart spaces and within their own bodies, and this idea of asking questions to themselves rather than to a power or a creator outside of themselves, and just showing up with different reminders and integrating modern practices, even science, um, into indigenous practices. And I think that's such a beautiful way that you and I get to collaborate and merge, is through these different languages. And it's really apparent to us that um, every day is a ceremony, and every moment, every breath we take is can have more of an impact, to be provided with more awareness. And in this case, water, this work with water has found us. It's everybody's work. It's not just our work. It's everybody's work to become more aware of the inadequacies of how we treat water. And so that's been part of our work, as well as bringing people to sacred sites, or what science calls vortex sites. And that's another way we've been bridging indigenous practices with modern ways, is going to different vortex sites and acknowledging these places as ancient because of our ancestors and even ancient civilizations before us, that admired and knew of these places. So going to those places and acknowledging them, giving back to them, whether it's through tobacco or prayer, dance, or song, but also receiving too. We know that these places are living, and we go to these places to give and receive. And usually they're much more abundant in their resources, whether it's just vegetation or greenery, or even clarity of water. So that's one of our um, uh, forms of work we've been doing, along with the sound therapy. But we've also been doing different intentional small events, especially with the COVID going around. It's allowed us to be word of mouth around these events, and just invite those who don't have as much fear around it, and as well as to respect it, to respect what's going on. And instead of implementing masks, we've been implementing immune boost stations, with whether it's herbal tonics or elixirs, or even like medicinal mushrooms. So we've been educating people of, yeah, masks are beneficial, but the true defense mechanism is our gut, is our microbiome in our bodies, in our immune system, of how it can combat these bacterias and these viral infections, because that's the true system that combats it, not a mask.
Getting
So
over the fear of it, right? I mean, it's a
yeah,
lot of it's all fear, and then when the fear gets inside, your cells vibrate differently, and here
true,
we go. And
true.
so,
Mm,
these are the things we talk about with water, is if you're putting the fear in it and then putting water in, water's helping you balance back out, and then the fear is still there.
mm,
So there's a mental aspect, there's a spiritual
mm,
aspect, and there's
right,
the physical, kind of the four elements, if you will. Um,
absolutely.
embodied in every person and thing, and the earth itself is all
Mm,
going on.
mm,
And the mass, whatever your tools are to make you feel comfortable, I'm good with it. And I don't want to
truth.
make anybody uncomfortable, but
Same.
we all know scientifically that a mask isn't going to do a whole lot.
Right, right,
even
right.
on the
Yeah.
science side. But we should respect people who think it does and not
Yeah. Yeah.
criticize it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, respect that opinion across the bridge. And there's always, you know, that's what makes the world go round, is the dipole, or the however
Yes.
many uniqueness and creativity is what it is in the end.
Uh-huh.
uh, and what you're doing is kind of more holistic and deeper, and
Mm,
I just
mm,
think that's real cool, because
mm.
you get a lot of education in a short period of time when you partake in things like this.
True.
But I'm kind
True.
of curious, when you're doing the sound healings and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
is it
Mm-hmm.
bringing back the work of your forefathers and your tribes, and traditional, or is it a
Yeah.
kind of a hybrid fusion of,
Yeah.
like, how are you guys doing that?
That it's definitely been yeah, we like to refer to it as walking both worlds, and even just bridging them, and you see it everywhere. You see it so many different areas now, and especially with different nations around the world. There's like, there's people, there's indigenous people wearing suits with, a lot of some beaded work on their suits, or if it's, or just it's just mixing a traditional way with, a modern way, and they can both simultaneously exist. And so with
Absolutely.
with the sound therapy is, is our attempt in doing that. And we like to sing some traditional songs, and even tell different creation stories of, that's been passed down and still exist, and are still the way that is believed that, indigenous people have come to be the stewards in particularly Turtle Island, or what we call as United States. And so, we just been sharing, even getting into prophecies too. There's different story times of different prophets of ancient times, of already knowing of these times that we're living in right now, that these times were already known of. And there's all kinds of stories that nations still hold today, that they've already known of these times. But it's just a beautiful time to be alive, especially, me being considered the younger generation, ish, and bridging. It's another bridging aspect of the youth and my elders. Is, there's still separation in many aspects of life. And one of them is our elders and our youth. And it seems like I'm right there in the middle, and have been bridging the indigenous knowledges and the structure of our elders back into the youth, which seems to be, the youth has more opportunities of distractions available to them. And so it's, we see the youth just, wandering several different directions. And so that's been some of our goal, is to bring the youth and the elders back together, and just, be able to work harmoniously together. But yeah,
It's a
yeah,
huge lesson for everybody, every family, I just call everybody tribes, whether they're nations or families or whatever,
yeah.
because it's your group that, is kind of your primary interest, and how to get
Mm-hmm.
that group to fit in with itself first,
Mm, mm,
and then with other groups is a huge task. I was kind of like you. I traveled all over, and the country in various parts of my life, and I would live with families for periods of times. And for about the first 2 weeks, it was everybody it was like really nice, but then it
mm.
would turn into a big drama fest, and you could tell everybody has their own individual emotions. And then
Mm-hmm.
the reality shows up. I thought it was my family growing up. I was like, man, my family's a bunch of, man, it's crazy. These people are crazy. You know what I mean?
Right,
But it
right,
was like every family in every state and every walk of life,
right,
and everyone, whether you're a cowboy, whether you were an Indian, whether you were
right,
Polish, whether you were whatever, it was the
right.
same thing. And I'm like, man, y'all are pointing fingers at each other all the time, from like
Exactly.
from group to group. But
Right.
I used to tell my family, we can't even get our own little group right. I mean, I'm not worried about the rest of the world right now.
Right.
And
That's
it's
funny.
just kind of a principle lesson of self, right? If you can't
Mm,
get things sorted out with self,
mm-hmm.
at least be honest with yourself. Nobody's perfect. And
Right.
we all
Right.
have freedom to wander, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's the beautiful
Absolutely.
thing. The youth can wander around and get perspectives that the elders won't get anymore.
Exactly.
and the
Exactly.
elders can get things in their wisdom on the inside and start sharing around the campfire again.
Absolutely.
And many people do this ritual, right? The transition of fires in the center and the vibrations and the water in your body and all these things, that are happening, are the same thing we talk about we do to water. It's the same thing you can do to yourself, and you start to
Absolutely.
see how everything fits together now, and
Yes.
that's where the focus needs to go.
Right.
Nothing wrong with being analytical and breaking things into more and more pieces, but I think
True.
that that uh, that wave is kind of coming to an end, and now it's time to take all the little pieces that science has made out of all this, which is very useful, and bring it back to simple elements. Like, we don't know
Absolutely.
that water is H2O. We know
Right.
that water is we know that water is a living sacred element. H2O is like saying, the tire is the car, and
Right.
it's
Right.
not. And it's no matter how much I look at this and try and make that argument, it's like H2O is the car after you took it all apart.
Right.
And until we figure out how to put it all back together, we don't really know what water is. So every day I'm asked to define what it is and what we're doing, like it's an on-off switch. And it's not. It's a little bit every day, a little deeper understanding every day of water and what it is and what it isn't. But do we know? Like, no, we don't. To me, it is the real gods that you interface with, that are not so personified yet. But then when you look at it, we're mostly water. So in a way, it's at least inside, it's personified very, very well of how it all works. So
Absolutely.
the educational aspect, I think that's cool, is I've dealt with the complexities of the science, and I really don't prefer that. But when I can see how it goes together, then I appreciate it. If I can't, then it's just noisy to me, and it doesn't do any good. But how all this goes together is part of what's going on here, where we simplify, put it together, and it's just the intention of it all. Honestly,
Absolutely.
the elements work with that.
Absolutely.
If the intention is bad, the elements work with it too, and everything's somewhat reflective, right? So now we have the answer to our questions about, what it all is and isn't really.
Right.
Some things are slower or faster, and water has like a fast side and a slow side. It's got like they say, computers have long-term and short-term memory references. So they look at long-term trends, make changes based on annual trends. And when I really, really looked at water in a fractional way, but still a vibrational way, that's what I came to is, I know what this is. The water's got a long-term bank, and it's making slow changes there. And it's got a short-term bank where it's making changes, I would say, faster than the speed of light based on what I've saw. And so you have this huge dipole, of one cycle per 1 year, 10 years. And people talk about erasing the memory of water. Well, I believe, that's like more the short term. The long term, water has a memory and an instruction and a program to bring about life. I mean, that's what it does the best, so you're not going to erase that part. You're actually amplifying the long term memory and erasing some of the short term memory, which is probably more, flowing down a mountain stream versus a rusty pipe. You know how that goes. I think we just lost your camera.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but your camera's...
there we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Now you're perfect.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for sharing all that. That's that in it. I feel like it's part of our work to really understand what water is, and it's the most abundant resource we have. It's in everything. It's the highest percentage of everything in our cells. Like you said, the memory. But yeah, I like how you put that with the long term and short term memory. That's incredible.
Nothing wants to be together more than water on Earth. I mean, that's kind of the leader, right? When we're talking about separation's good, people need their alone time, and trees can't grow too far on top of each other, and cells can't pile up on each other and smother each other. So separation is important at a certain range.
Yes.
But the mother of all creation is definitely integration, and water is the leader in that, as far as something we can all
Mm.
connect with the universe with. From our perspective, we see it, it's obvious. So
Right.
I'm not so interested in the scientific debate of what water is and isn't
True.
anymore, and more getting on with the show. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where, it comes in. And I've always been a natural to, and I absolutely loved how you said indigenous means something different today than
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
it's been used as. And I don't even like to say it anymore, that,
Right.
Native
Mm-hmm.
American, or I don't like to say
Right.
any race or whatever. We're just people
True.
doing
True.
our things with different lines of long-term memory that we can tap into and share.
Yep.
And I always thought the Native American perspective, because that's all I could do was study it. I didn't grow
Right.
up with it. I didn't, it was a distant thing. But that's kind of what I thought life should be like.
Right.
And
Right.
yet my life was unfolding in a totally different way that really didn't make sense to me, but the other did.
Right.
And even later on in life, it was more of an attraction to nature, I realized, not so
Mm.
much Native American
Right.
stories or
Mm-hmm.
whatever I was studying. My mom used to read a lot of books on natives, so I used to read them after, even when I
Right.
couldn't understand them when I was a kid. I was if I saw her reading one of those books, I was like, gimme. And so, like, a lot of it made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew
Mm-hmm.
up, Christian, and I'm not saying there's not value in that, but the day in,
Right.
day out teachings of it, totally, like, there was nothing about animals, there was nothing about water really, other than these
Right.
little anecdotes. And I
Right.
was kind of like, man, I'm like, and they taught us that only human beings had souls, and I was like, get out of here.
Right.
So I'm in third grade going to the principal's office over a religious argument that, I'm saying I know animals have souls, and you say they don't, I say they do.
True.
What is
Uh-huh.
this all about that we're doing? And at any
Right.
rate, as
Mm.
it evolved, it was nature, so I got to spend a lot of time in nature. And I think that's where I say I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
I technically knew how to do a lot of things, and I knew how to be disciplined and responsible, but I didn't really grow up until my life became, like, primarily surrounded by nature. And just without any effort, the health and you can feel your body integrate, and you don't need it as much. And then you get back into you bridge back over into the world again, and it's like, holy, you
Right.
almost can't even deal with it. It's almost
Right.
too much. There's so much stuff going on. So to switch
True.
back and forth on a regular basis between New York City
Mm.
and out on the, reservation, and a fire ritual is like a huge,
Mm.
swing, absolutely huge swing.
Right.
But I've seen the fusion, if you will, of this bridge happening, like, on a spiritual level with pathways that I trust. So I've
Mm.
been part of some very old uh, Native American ceremonies that they were fusing the tradition of how they would do those ceremonies and do more modern stuff, and the quality of it was just amazing. And when you tap into spirit and get into that space, and the noise goes away, which is a lot of what these ceremonies do. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what water structuring does. It kind of gets rid of the scrambled up and jumbled up, and
Mm.
makes some space for things, for energy to flow again.
Right.
And we
Right.
talk about this all the time, that you push, push, push for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and nothing's happening. And then you kind of almost give
Right.
up and say, I got to step away from this. And then you go, wait a minute, like a vision
Right.
comes,
Right.
and then
Right.
it's easy. Like, you just go do it at that point, right?
Exactly.
And if we can start to do that as a people, even small numbers. So I
Mm.
think that's
Mm.
what this is about, is starting to make alliances not based over business contracts, but alliances based over sacred things, and get to work, and then get the
Right.
support.
Right.
That's why we're doing this webinar. If nobody gets involved in anything that we're doing other than being here right now, it's
True.
huge.
It's
It's
true.
it's a huge thing going out at that point, and people can be proud of that, whether they have any time or money or any resource to put into
Mm.
the bigger picture, which is what happens. We'll
Right.
be, in my opinion, what have I seen for 1/1000th of the money spent, probably 1/1 millionth in a short period of time, incorporating like biomimicry and
Mm-hmm.
intention and common vision, will be way more successful at such
Mm-hmm.
a fraction of whatever has gone on in the last 100 years, which I don't even
Mm-hmm.
want to go off on that topic because it's just the wrong
Right.
focus,
Right.
but we all
I
know what
get
it
you.
is,
Yeah.
you know.
And
And
yeah, that's what I I feel like we're rewriting what value is, what worth is, what abundance is, because we're, especially this last year, we've seen how fragile our system as a nation is, and so people have to start working together if they want to continue living the way they want to. Whether it's clean food or clean water, that's the true value, and that has to be redefined. And I think that's what we're doing through water. It's like it's the most valuable resource we have. Nothing exists without it. And
And just look at, like, with 8 billion people and the poundage of stuff going around, like the tonnage of food, right? So if you eat good food and drink good water, and a lot of people are experimenting this, you don't need near the calories that everybody thinks you need. So now the consumption of food goes down. If there's any one way that the human race can make a change, it's individually reducing how much we consume. And raising the quality of what we consume raises the quality of our waste, which fulfills our animal requirement. We're just here transforming matter to give to another thing, to restart the cycle back over again.
Exactly.
And so, people don't really think about high quality shit.
Right.
We kind of say that sarcastically, but really, like, that's what goes on. That's our base animal root, is everything is here to transform, to raise the quality and grow the whole thing together, right? So transformation becomes huge here. Everybody's acting like everything is stuck, which it is if we don't work together. It is. That's what's holding it up, is everybody has their own special interest and direction or thing, and everybody's in a survival mode, and the money's always starving, and, like, you don't need money to do anything. Like, we can go do things with next to no money, and money has value. There's nothing wrong with it, but we can begin that way. Like, I would do this music, right? Music's coming up. Like, you hear music and water coming more and more, and that's always been my thing.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like music. It's not one thing. People go, is it structured or is it not structured? I'm like, that's like saying, is it a good song or a bad song? Like, I don't know. Like, you tell me. But, like, disharmonious stuff, even the non-musician will walk away. I always use that analogy. You don't need to be and know anything about music. Play it. You don't need to know any theory. You just listen.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
And bad music is going to drive you away, and good music is going to pull you together.
Absolutely.
And what we're playing in our whole environment is a weird mix, right, of stuff that's just noisy and wasteful, and we all know it, and it's make money now and short-sighted. And you read some of the Water Today Canada interviews, and that's what's going on a regular basis. And behind it all, we know there's corruption, and anywhere there's money flowing, we know that exists. Who cares?
Right.
That's not what it's about. But you see, like, in the interviews, what has happened. It's all very like, well, it worked out good in the beginning, but now 10 years down the road, it's a giant mess. We have to start over again.
Right.
And I want to kind of get involved with, from a conventional level and a different level that you and I are more talking about right now, and bridge those two together. About how to do things with a long-term value. It's like if valves in an industrial plant cost 20 grand, and the salesmen don't want to do anything that stops the valves from breaking early, right, which is improve the water quality, because that's what destroys the valves, because they want to sell another $20,000 valve. And then if they're not like that, then the company don't like them that they work for. Then they're a bad salesman, and on we go with this short-term philosophy. And the plant managers are like, I'm worried about what's going to break tomorrow, man. I can't focus on what's going on. I'm like, but do you realize you're part of the gene of the problem that didn't care 10 years ago, and now all this stuff's breaking down? And I think you could hear in the one article, the guy said, well, we have 1.5 operators for this $9 million plant right now.
Crazy.
Right. And we can't keep up with it. So that affects the water quality, and the way they were doing it, the water wrecked the plant sooner.
Right.
Because that's what water does when it's reflective. You put pressure on it and move it around unnaturally, it starts putting pressure back.
Truth.
And it's just a simple fact, actually, scientifically. It's what's happening. And so this marks kind of the transition there where we start to have the intelligence and wisdom to plan 10 years, 15, 20 years ahead, which is in the realm of your and I, lifetime for sure. So this is no small undertaking, and it's steadiness and persistence.
Right.
And I like the way you're doing it.
Same.
If we go too fast, too soon, and don't have the large enough tribe,
Right.
there's going to be some downward pressure testing us out. Ultimately that comes from
Exactly.
the universe, right? It's
True.
not the bad guys.
Right.
It's just the
Yeah.
opposition.
Truth. Yeah, even like, the vessel that water can hold, if it's, the flow is too much and the vessel is not properly equipped, then yeah, there's overspillage, and if it's not properly guided. So it's like, yeah, it's everything we're talking about, we can directly relate and symbolize back to water. And so that's why, I'm grateful to be talking with you and be doing this work for water, for each other, for different communities. It's such a symbolism of being in Las Vegas right now, and this whole city being powered off of, one of the biggest dams there is, and working towards, the vision of freeing up the waterways, and bringing back living laws and regulations back for water as a living entity, and treating water as we would treat one another. Yeah, like you said, I get I see that vision as well.
Cool. Now, going into so when we first talked a little bit, I remember I don't know how we actually crossed paths, and it really don't matter, we just did. And you were talking about Victor Schauberger and a water bar and
Yes.
education, and we started getting a little bit of a twinge of a vision of how we would design this water bar. And I think we realized we could probably make this into something cool. But what's the concept behind the water bar, and where would that be implemented, and what's the total vision there?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. And so a couple friends and I started Guy's Gift, Biophotonic sacred geometry water bottles last year, and that gave birth to the idea that, everybody drinks water, and the more aware of that we are of the structure of water, then then maybe your vessel should reflect that just as well. So we're educating people on this specific type of glass that has specific properties to the way it reacts to light and water, and that gave birth into what we're doing right now, particularly in Vegas. Like you said, you and I have a vision of collaborating with these water bars, and the idea around that is that it will be people like to socialize, and people like to be around each other in a good atmosphere. And so the idea is that we can have, we can merge all of these knowledge systems, and make them cool, if that's what people are interested in. And the idea around specific recipes of crystals has an effect on water, and the idea that showing people how water is flowing, and educating, so making it more artistic, and adding a little bit of vibrancy to the atmosphere, and music and art, and even this way that the children can be involved as well. But it's just the idea that socializing, people like to be around each other, and a better way to show people visually, like you said, having clear cases around some of these columns, and showing people how this water is being vortexed, or being purified or filtered, or whatever the medium is. We can show people, just by physical demonstration. We could be educating people of the importance of water, and how important it is to have clean water. But that'll provide a place where people can come fill up their water. There's several places like these that already exist, but just the way we want to incorporate a more of a community aspect, and including the children, including nature, education, music, We envision these places of being a place where people can hang out, people can um, learn, just community vibes. And so those are, like you said, you and I have a pilot program coming up with that, and I envision those just as popular as regular bars or even like coffee shops, or kava bars are a new amazing wave of socializing without having to be drunk. It's incredible, and so I plan to merge already with a sister in Florida with a kava bar, or even the there's a couple places that already exist around, like tonics and elixirs and herbal, and like an herbal lounge. Um, so yeah, the idea is just to make water cool. It's it's there, but it's not there. I think that's where you and I really get to merge and vision of how to pop up these water bars at different events and different festivals. Because we all know it, everybody needs water, but if the more we can make it like a vibe and more artistic, and include everybody from all walks of life, and just the idea is education. It all gets back into education, and if we can make that more of creativity, that's more received on that end. So
Yeah, it was
yeah.
kind of the interesting lineup, because I started communicating with Jen Isabel. She goes by Isabel Friend. I did a interview with her a month ago or something, I think. And I asked her how she got started. And so she used to, go to the music festival circuits, which are phenomenal, by the way. Like today, the jam band circuit is just insanely good, talented, in the flow musicians that kind of represent what you were talking about, almost in different ways. These events have that ceremony and the campfire and the music, and everybody kind of groove into the same rhythm. And when you go to them, like everybody that gets dumped in the hippie bucket for sure,
Right.
which has its own connotation. But if people went, you would see it's like the most diverse crowd, and they almost treat it. They dress up, they mask up, they play. A lot of it's office people and corporate executives and stuff like this. So I always meet like the coolest people at these things. And one of my biggest things to do, I think, COVID, I was kind of ticked off because every year I go to a couple really good festivals and just let it all the other stuff drop around the music primarily. And they're a lot more sober than like the honky tonks I used to hang out at and things like that when I was younger. So it's a very like healthy way. And I'm not saying people don't party and do what they do. That's always going to be there. It's cool, but there's something very genuine and orderly about it, with the music centering it. Like we talked about, good music just pulls people and they want to get closer and they want to feel more of it, and you get that vibe out of it. So to me, it was really cool when you said you were doing music stuff. And so we're getting together for the Phoenix Rising Festival in Ohio. It just turned out that when we were talking about to get together, your next festival was in Ohio. And I think that's a little bit of a more smaller, quaint one, so it's a good way to do this. And that's how Isabel basically started her whole thing 12 years ago. Is instead of just going to these music festivals and kind of not having any center in it, she started studying water and educating people at the festivals. And then that just stayed with her, throughout the internet of involvement, and especially with the COVID thing going on, where there's no music festivals where you can really get together. So really cool there. And I look forward to kind of throwing the vision around a little bit and seeing what we can come up with in the primitive start of it, just simple style.
Absolutely.
And then there's a question here. I'll let you kind of I want to hear your take on the answer. Can you see that, where they're talking about, can you prove that there's memory in water? How can it be proven? Do you know of any scientific study? I'll answer it, but I want you to answer it too. About, memory and water, and what how you feel about that. Maybe how the ancestral teaching is about that a little bit. What's the bridge here, coming from your side of the coin?
Truth. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's interesting to note that science is really relatively new language, and although we there's so many stories and accounts and in dances and songs that point to just the sacredness of water, and even just the stewardship or the the attention to detail of taking for water. So that alone, I feel like is the science of um, and how it holds memory, because just the simple experiments of what sound does for the structuring of water. Our ancestors didn't know of that back then, but that knew that drumming and singing and dancing did something to the water, and therefore their cells, the cells in their bodies um, had that same effect. So I think just tradition was always passed on, that the importance of water was, I I feel like it was just a daily thing. I don't think it was um, um, a thing we went out of our way. I think for me it's the idea that nature is religion for some of my ancestors and other indigenous communities, that there wasn't a separation between the elements, or between even just nations. But yeah, getting back to the question, of the science of the memory. Yeah, for me it goes back into just songs and dance and so many across the globe. Traveled to so many different continents, and seeing and witnessing the importance that water has in songs and dance and in nature. There must be yeah, of course, yeah, there's memory in that alone, that memory of song and dance, and um,
Well,
passed down from.
how to know what shape to form under a certain vibration or cymatics is somewhat of a memory. How does it know to
Mm,
transform in this way?
mm,
And
mm,
does that ever change?
mm,
And that's kind of what I saw scientifically is
mm,
you watch it water evolve and then you see it evolve more rapidly the next time the same condition occurs. It's
mm.
learning. Not only
True.
does it have forget about memory, it's
Mm.
able to learn. And if it's able
Truth.
to learn, then it must have some type of memory. And really it gets confusing because it's all right now. It's all going on with the universal orchestra right now. So not only is water connected to its near,
Mm,
it's also connected to what the moon's doing. It's also connected to what other planets are doing.
mm, mm,
And this is the true modern day physics, that there's all a real time induction, a now point.
mm,
There's fundamental guidelines in the universe, and then
mm.
there's new things that are created that work with those guidelines to build the new.
Right.
And those guidelines change subtly, kind of like the ancients, old or dark spirits, they would kind of call them,
Uh
where
huh.
they're more rigid and more Saturn like and more,
Mm,
more
mm,
what gets deemed as evil or bad or dark, which that's a kind of a dramatic spin-off of the true definition of dark, or
mm.
the underworld, right? There's nothing bad about it at all. It's kind of a
Right.
foundation that you paint over. The universe is
Yes.
painted over black.
Right.
It gives the brilliance the ability to stand out.
Right.
So all these parodies you look at are fundamental, very, very, very fundamental aspects that water will probably never change because it's part of this living whole. And then these little
Mm,
things of, hey, you can program water, you
mm,
can see it change its own program. So very much it behaves by clinical definition of what alive means.
right.
And at the same time, there's, like you and I talked about earlier, you can't define it. It's
Right.
within water is the mystery of the universe, and some
True.
of these
Mm,
philosophical and ancient views are they're always going to be true, which
mm,
means we can always build a better relationship and always improve. and
Mm-hmm.
getting in the flow of things and starting to do. And you don't think the music, you play the music.
Truth.
And we're right in this rational world of pushing buttons, right? On, off, proof. Does it exist? Does it not exist?
Right.
Am I in fear? Am I not? Where's that
Right.
step that I take where I'm over the line? And
Mm.
these types of things just need to be more comfortable movement for everybody. And that's a long time to deprogram ourselves, our souls, and its
Mm.
imprints for past lives, future lives, and now, whatever you believe in.
Right.
It's, you just don't run away from that or hop away from that really quick. You gently move away from that and leave the things behind that don't serve you. And
Exactly.
I think that the more, if you want to understand water, just start looking at yourself, what works for you and
True.
what doesn't work for you. And 9 out of 10 times is going to be the exact same for the water.
Absolutely.
And one time it's going to do something creative that you learn from. And another time it's going to do something destructive that you learn from. And water has all that emotion and capability in it. So we play and we dance and we learn, just like it's a living being. And it is, from what I know scientifically, it is the best solution to all the water problems itself, is with water and the
Right.
transformation of it.
Absolutely.
That's the big thing, is we transform, the toxins transform, the bacteria, microbes transform. The transformation I've seen when this is done with great care and science bridged, what you can
Mm-hmm.
do with soil and water in a short period
Mm-hmm.
of time is nothing short of amazing.
Absolutely.
And you can do it with the earth too, if we can get people to kind of utilize our resources combined and support each other.
Mm.
Right now it's a lot of independent and heroism, and
Mm-hmm.
people who have their little secrets in the corner that are going to solve the world's problems. And when it becomes the bigger group, the bigger tribe, the more collective, then the ego goes away, and we don't need to try and patent everything and
Right. Right. Right.
all this stuff that goes
Mm-hmm.
on, that every invention ever made is kind of like a shady copy of nature, all
Right.
complicated on paper. You know what I mean? Honestly,
Absolutely.
that's
All
every
everything in
invention.
pharmacy. Yep.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, just over forcing isolation of a natural plant, like it all, like from the equator, right? All the pharmaceutical companies hang around the equator where the dielectric equilibrium is. That's where the north
Oh.
and south pole are canceled out, right?
Right. Right.
So that's
Right.
where everything's radiating out the most. And like when planets get old, like Saturn, they'll start throwing rings of water out. That's the
Ah.
reseed for life.
Right.
Is water's actually seed for life it's pushing out. So,
Mm. Mm.
where's water in the solar system? And there's no water in the solar system except on Earth. And it's like, what are the rings of Saturn made out of? Ice. Is ice not water?
Right.
It's
Exactly.
just in a different phase.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There's little critters that crawl around in the ice and build things. It's like, what are they doing in there? I mean, this is a scientific fact. There's little critters that crawl around in ice and move the ice around. Well,
Wow.
they're restructuring the ice, and the ice is restructuring them,
Damn.
right?
Exactly.
They're in shape. They're smart. They're working together when they're building stuff.
Absolutely.
So, does it have any purpose? Yeah. Do we understand it? Other than that, no. They're getting better, and the water's getting better somehow with whatever they're doing, because
Right.
they're working
Absolutely.
together.
Absolutely.
So this is cool stuff, I think. And now
Mm. Mm.
science knows water is actually has a kind of a definition of alive or not, and is never dead. I always tell people it's never completely dead, but
Truth.
it's stuck in the transition of needing to be uplifted and revive. And there's all forms and allotropes of water, and we don't even know where this can go. Now it's kind of going into programming, and the idea is coming about that your medicine or your herbs, even for some people on this earth, it'll be more effective to take a tiny amount of that stuff, and you don't have to get crazy homeopathic with it.
True.
Turns out it's a lot simpler if the water's alive. So
True.
everybody was doing all these studies with dead water, and then
Right.
sometimes they would work, and they were doing things that kind of brought the water alive. Who knows? They could have been listening to classical music in the lab.
Exactly.
They could have been using a magnetic stir, right, in the laboratory,
Mm-hmm.
mixing stuff up, and they get these results that they don't get if they don't have a magnet involved. It's
Exactly.
obvious, right? Now we
Mm-hmm.
know more about magnetism. We know how it works. Now we know water is, actually water opposes a magnetic field. So whether you take a north or a south pole and put it on water, the water moves away from it.
Right,
Right.
right, right.
So there's different components going on. So if you just want to use magnets for water technology, you have to understand what you're actually doing with them.
The poles, yeah.
There's different parts to a magnet and how they work. So we're good there, and it's time for implement and development and resource raising, whatever it may be. So that's what we're going to go do together.
Yep.
And we'll see if anybody has any questions for you before we cut out here. And I'll give you, well, that's popping up. I'll give you opportunity to kind of say what you'd like to say.
Sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
Give you an opportunity to kind of say, what you want to say to finish up. And
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Cool. Again, just grateful to be in collaboration with you, particularly, and it just seems like the future is a newer understanding. Is this newer understanding of water and how it's it is the technology that will seed the healing of this of the earth. And as you mentioned in your text too, we're facing long-term consequences of the earth. And even in the soils, there's not a lot of time that we have to reverse the destruction that we've already on set. So I think the idea is that we come together despite all of the distractions and the separation, and I think that's where we get to come together is earth stewardship or water stewardship. And the analogy that um, several great musicians coming together doesn't make a good band. It's the practice and it's the work, the time and the energy together that will produce that. And we see that. I see that every day in my reflections in the people around me. I know that these coming years are really important for the health of not the earth. The earth will continue. She will continue. It's not even about her. It's about humanity killing themselves.
we're the weak ones. The earth is strong, and part
Truth.
of what they sell is the earth is going to fall apart, and it'll fall apart for us. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
all other life everywhere, all places in the universe will continue just fine. And if the earth is better off supporting more primordial single cell and evolution or starting over again, then that's what it'll do. So we have to make the synergy to make the longevity of the relationship.
Absolutely.
Just like you got a man, but that's a great example because
Mm.
actually, when they bring really good musicians together, it has a rough time compared
Exactly.
to a band that's played together and coalesced. You feel everything and allow it to flow through in a band, and you tell that. Like even if I can remember when I wouldn't play a long time, and you would get in
Mm-hmm.
the groove where you are not consciously thinking about what you're playing anymore. You can't even really hear what you're playing, and you're
Right.
listening to what everybody else is playing. Is the sweet spot in the music.
Exactly.
Your body is
Exactly.
on autopilot, kind of like if you drive
Mm.
and you realize, oh my God, I don't think I've looked at the road for the last 10 miles because I was so visioning something on the drive. But your
Yep.
body goes into, you're like, I didn't miss a beat though driving, but I don't recall any of the driving. Or I didn't look at anything. I was locked into this
Mm.
vision, that drone of the road, the rhythm, the rhythm
Right.
of covering miles on the freeway. So
Truth.
um,
Truth.
somebody asked, where they could find more about what you're doing. So I know you talked about, the Facebook. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
primary? And give us that one, and I'll type it in the
Okay. Yeah.
group.
For right now, I think we're in the middle of updating our website. So right now, to get a hold of us and to see different events and things would be our Facebook page, which is Ancestral Medicine Revival. And actually our Gaia's Gift website is down too. So I think, yeah, for right now, Ancestral Medicine Revival would be the best place to get a hold of us and reach out or anything of that sort. And yeah, again, like you said, just we're excited to collaborate with everybody that's doing their part. That's participating as an indigenous to the earth, and yeah, we want to do this together. It's like it's way easier together. So we're excited. I'm super grateful for you, Jonathan, and to have this opportunity to share. And the future is the now future is really bright. And I see these water bars and a collective of earth stewardship that we've talked about. People participating in implementing and documenting data with the provided tools to test waters in their region. And that's beautiful participation for each other and ultimately the earth and her resources.
Yeah, a lot of projects, a lot, it
Mm-hmm.
seems daunting, and I mean, we're no big corporate entity or anything, and Water
Absolutely.
Today Canada it just shows what a small number of people focus can do. And now that that's all twisting together, uh, it has a lot of broadness to it, a lot of power, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
efficient power and very graceful power. And
Absolutely.
that's where I want to stay in the space. I've been in the bare knuckle fights with industry, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all just training. And
Mm.
at some point, like everybody knows this. If you don't have your health, governments can make laws and people can lock you in boxes and force things around. But really, ultimately, the cage that you build for yourself is around your own health.
Yes.
And there's memories of that go through the DNA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And water itself is the mechanism behind DNA and
Mm.
how it works. The
Right.
proteins don't do anything if they're not embodied in water and have a shape,
Right.
to guide it in their shape like cymatics, right? If you really start
Mm-hmm.
to connect all these pieces. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
um, watertoday.ny. And I don't want to overstep my bounds here, so none of this is overly official yet, but I'm fairly confident the momentum's there and the things have
Mm-hmm.
happened. So sometime in New York this year, we plan to get together,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and get as much support as we can all together, and at the same time, it's more on the inside, not the
Mm-hmm.
outside,
Right.
of how things connect together. So gather up, you know, all your tribes and start to get support for that, and because it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
scale out, it's gonna move into the rest of the country, and I think it's gonna, based on what I can tell of how it started, it's going to move way faster than
Right.
estimated, and they'll
Absolutely.
synergize. So
Yes.
that cause will help your cause and help our
Mm-hmm.
cause, and we'll become stronger together.
Absolutely.
I'm happy you were there right in the beginning to kind of say, "Hey, man, I want to get involved in what you're doing, and I want to get involved in what you're doing there." The,
Absolutely.
the grassroots little stuff is just as important as the big stuff. They're one and the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I wanted to mention too. The other project that you and I have is bringing portable water devices to indigenous communities. And actually, so my first my first giving of first of all, thank you and for those donations, those gracious
Oh,
donations,
yeah, you're
and
welcome.
so I'll be giving two of those filtration devices to some Paiute people here in Las Vegas. So actually, it's wonderful that we get to speak of this. It's wonderful that we get to speak of this today and be able to offer the first filtration device today as well. So that's pretty synchronistic, and yeah, I'll be having a fundraiser talking about how we get to support other indigenous communities all over the country, and how people can be involved in that, and just bringing more attention of the water quality to indigenous communities. So again, lots of appreciation for that.
No, and I'm so glad to be a part of it, and everybody who's ever, has a unit. I mean, all those resources of purchasing technologies or whatever we do, which will continue to evolve and expand in ways I don't even know yet. And that's part of what we're doing here in the bigger pictures in the background, I think we can kind of bring in some very advanced, we could bridge into Tesla type stuff and show how that he very much understood the natural energy flows in the universe, and so can
Yep.
everybody. Every third grader can understand that very well. To feel it and articulate it are two different things. Everybody should feel it. Everybody
Yes.
can hear the music. You have your
Yes.
preferences, and
Yes.
so looking forward to it. And question: does this include Canadian tribes? Actually, the whole thing with Water Today Canada is very rooted in that, but even they are trying to step away from making this about a Native American thing or an Indigenous thing, even though we do need to look at those bridges in the background. In the foreground, I can tell they're not even wanting to they don't want to let everybody know that it's primarily natives and chiefs and from what I understand, it's about 120 tribes across Canada, led by about 8 chiefs. Don't quote me on that, but that's just something I remember in the discussions. And there's trust issues.
There is.
There's trust issues, and there should be trust issues when you look at
Absolutely.
the record,
Absolutely.
from inside and outside. And that's what I like about this group is they know where the trust issues are on the inside too. So, and I think that's part of what's teaching them, hey, we can't like make this a separatism thing.
Right.
Like we're doing the same thing on the inside that's coming from the outside. The complaints that everybody sees going outward are happening in here, so we need to clean it up all the way around. And we all got cleanup work to do. I mean, I think that's I think I heard some like Swami say that Earth is just a big rehab facility for souls, and everybody's got stuff to clean up here.
That's true.
And I kind of like that because it's like, yeah, everybody, nobody's
Got to figure it
perfect.
out. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
There's all sorts of examples of where even the masters go off and don't call me a master anymore because I
Right.
trained to be one, but
I'm here.
it's a hoax on self,
Right.
and a
Truth.
stall out of evolution. So, and a simple answer, yes, there is Canadian tribes involved in this, and they're very. I'm gonna have trouble with that one. I'll be right back.
No worries.
Sorry.
No worries. The water's thinking for itself or something out there.
That I don't think my guy shut down the shop correctly.
Oh. Whoops.
Yeah, compressor went off, and it's right next to we're in the 3D print lab right now, so there was no hearing in that. But I think we're yeah, Suzanne Versace is a writer and she works for Water Today Canada, and she's a big part of that. So she's here. So 630 First Nation communities in Canada. So that's quite a large body, and I think what this is about is kind of the same thing we would do anywhere, but we have a good place to start, and they know how to work in their direction, and perhaps you and I will help spearhead how to connect it together in a bigger way in the U.S., and that's really the goal. That's what we're doing, and that's fun. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Yep. We'll be in New York together here shortly.
Yeah. Fun. And we'll keep everybody apprised of what's going on. So right now we're trading the Water Today Canada interviews. There's a lot of interviews going on, and we had a webinar with Suzanne Versace just recently, and so everybody can go look at that recording and kind of get a better idea of what's going on there on our member site, and we'll try and keep it current as much as we can about what's going on. But there's a lot about groundwork and behind the scenes work to do for everything here, and I'm happy to do the fun side with you. What I think is the kind of more children and joyous energy of it all, and then there's some tilling up the soil and prep that's got to be done on the other end. That's pretty hard work. So it's a good balance.
A little play and work for sure. Yep.
Izzy, can you repeat the name of the website again? It's actually Facebook right now.
Yeah, it's actually Facebook for now. It's Ancestral, ANCESTRAL, Medicine, MEDICINE, and Revival, REVIVAL.
Okay, and I will put that up just as we're shutting down. I kind of got distracted.
Yeah, no worries.
The autocorrect is killing me.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, and then yeah, we'll have our website up soon. But yeah,
All right. Oh, yep. Richard got it. Cool. Beat,
perfect.
yeah, beat me to it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Richard.
See, everybody's helping and pitch it in. I love it. All right,
Lovely.
well, cool. If there's no more questions, we'll roll on, and I'll get this up on our member site, and I'll get you a copy, Izzy, and so
Yep.
we can all use our channels to interweave our uh, synchronized mission here that we're doing.
Perfect. Wonderful. I'll use this for the fundraiser. This will be perfect.
Cool. Look forward to it. We're gonna sign off. Thank you so much, Izzy. I appreciate it.
So
It's
much love.
awesome learning more about
I
everything.
appreciate you.
We'll talk soon, man.
Talk
Take
soon.
care. All
Okay,
right,
bye.
bye.
Thank you, buddy.